there, and welcome to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Simmons, Robin Washett. Later we'll be joined by Abby Barmore as we get you through the next hour, as a lot going on around the world of college football, around the world of Husker football. Coaches on the road. They got on the road last Friday. Transfer portal opened Monday, and that's where we kind of lead things off, guys, with opening headlines. It was a very quiet portal Monday in Lincoln. In fact, only one scholarship player over the first 2 days of it opening had put their name in the transfer portal, and that was tight end / former linebacker. Now I'm blanking on his name.
Applegate.
Jake Applegate. How am I blanking on his name? Jake Applegate.
Come on, Sean.
Put his name in the portal this week.
Snap to it.
My mind is thinking too many things. So that alone got my attention, guys. A very quiet portal Monday. We kind of thought that was going to be the case, but about 1,100 players went in the portal on the first day. Only one from Nebraska.
As of 9 p.m. yesterday, 1,183 players have gone in. Football players from
Monday.
the FBS. That's just pure FBS. So yeah, one, but only one from Nebraska. And we have said, I think on previous shows, that we don't expect a lot of Nebraska players to go into the portal, right, Sean?
No, I think Matt Rule kind of painted that picture already, that it was going to be a fairly quiet run. And now because the players like where things are at. I think they're well taken care of in the framework of what they're doing. And I think that's what Nebraska has done a good job of. I mean, they've structured their NIL where, every player on this roster, I think, is taken care of to some extent. And when you have a happy culture within your locker room, you're not going to have a lot of guys moving for different reasons. And I think they've done a good job of that. They've got some of these guys to come back, like Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmacher. We still don't know about Isaac Gifford, but they've done a really good job. Bryce Benhart probably coming back.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, there's going to be attrition. There's always attrition, and especially as they make additions over the course of this portal cycle, that's going to phase some guys out, and guys are going to see the writing on the wall, and they're going to move on. So just because it hasn't been the flurry, especially compared to last year where it was just unreal, the stability is nice, but there will be some, and it's just a matter of how big of dominoes end up leaving. Like,
right.
Are there going to be significant names that hit the portal, like an Ernest Hausman last year, or the unexpected guys that
Casey Rogers,
that you're planning on being a key part of your lineup? I mean, that happens. It happens every year. It's just a matter of how much can you limit those significant pieces from moving on.
Jake Applegate, it was in a tight end room that had Thomas Fedoni, Nate Borkacher, and Luke Lindenmeyer at the top. So, and then they're adding
Carter Nelson,
Eric
Ingwerson, and Ian Flint.
Right.
And potentially
Keelan
Smith can be a tight end.
Yeah. And there's a hyphen named Ismail Smith
Flores is a tight end, a freshman, true freshman.
So reeled off 7 names.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it made sense to me, Applegate jumping in. It did. From that standpoint. He's in a loaded room. And there's 3 guys clearly ahead of him. I mean, just 3 right off the top of your head. Fedoni, Borkacher, and Lindenmeyer ahead of him.
Well, and they all have their own roles. I mean, Lindenmeyer is kind of carved into like a H-back fullback for him. And obviously, Borkacher is kind of that solid number 2. Fedoni's their 1. And I think a Carter Nelson or somebody like that could push next year. And just like a Malachi Coleman or Jalen Lloyd did this year. I mean, they're going to find a way.
Yeah.
And that's one thing this staff did a really good job of last year. They got 12 of the 27 freshmen on the field last year. The scholarship true freshmen.
And they preserved a lot of red shirts too, of guys that were right on that brink.
Well, the other storyline here in opening headlines, guys, is portal additions. And the last couple of years, it's been wild. I mean, I think about last year alone, in January and December, Nebraska hosted 47 official visitors in 2 months. And a lot of those were portal guys, and a lot of them were high school guys.
Wait a second. January and February?
No, December and January.
December.
You can't host visitors in February.
Okay, 47. Sent Sean to the hospital almost.
Yeah, you too, by the way. But 47 visitors.
Kids are hanging on by a thread.
And that was really 5 weekends.
Yeah, it was crazy. Remember?
I mean, it was like 5 of the most jam-packed. I'll never forget how busy it was last year. I mean, I was at my dad, they go to Arizona, so they always celebrate their Christmas before Christmas. And it was on like one of those Sundays. And I worked in the guest bedroom
the
entire time at my dad's house, just because, Marco Ortiz was committing, and
ended up being a pretty good long snapper.
Yeah,
by the way, no problems there.
We didn't talk about it's the only time we've talked about it on the show all year.
Yeah,
but it was a wild day and a wild time, but this year won't be that way. I mean, I think when you look at the portal, there's one priority, Steve Sipple, and we all know what that is.
Yeah, the quarterback position, and they're rolling. I mean, they visited Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, visited Sam Levitt. So it had been Monday night or Monday afternoon, left Monday night. We talked to Levitt it was right after Satterfield left. So Levitt is intriguing to me. Also, they're looking at Drew Chapin, a Baylor quarterback who's an older quarterback. Levitt has 4 years
Blake
remaining.
Chapin.
Yeah. Okay. I call him Drew. Blake Chapin has 1 year left. He's the older guy. Levitt's the younger guy.
Did not play for Matt Rule at Baylor, by the way.
Did not.
He committed to Baylor in February of Blake Chapin did. But Vince Ginta would have been there. Corey Campbell would have been there. I mean, there's definitely some connections to Blake Chapin on this staff. I mean, with Ginta being the main personnel player for Dave Aranda at Baylor back then. Yeah,
they're similar. Those guys, Levitt and Chapin, are similar in the way they play, not similar in age. One's a young guy, one's an old guy, but they're similar. They're similar guys in the way they play. They can both, they both remind me of Purdy. They really do. They can run, not as fast as Chubba, but they're runners. They're kind of, they're just kind of gritty, tough guys that can move the ball down the field. Both have talent. Levitt, I really like Levitt. I mean, I think people have picked up on that. I really like it. He's got a lot of talent, a lot of arm talent.
Well, he was poised to be Michigan State's starter. If, a coaching change wasn't going to happen.
Well, what happened was Jonathan Smith took over at Michigan State, and Jonathan Smith was at Oregon State and didn't recruit Sam Levitt, even though Levitt was a 4-star player at West Lynn High School, which is a suburb of Portland. He was a very good quarterback, state championship quarterback.
Oregon High School Player of the Year.
Yeah, Gatorade High School Player of the Year. And Jonathan Smith didn't show him the time of day, so Levitt said, I'm not going to play for him. And he's very adamant about it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play for him. So he's out, and he's looking. He's going to visit Utah and Nebraska and probably a few others.
There's a name you didn't mention that has links to Nebraska, Kyle McCord for Ohio State.
Will Howard, too.
Will Howard.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty high-profile guys there.
We our Kansas State Online site with On3 reported that Nebraska has had talks with Will Howard, among other teams. I mean, several teams have had talks with Will Howard, but the new topic, and if you like to play this game in December where you track flights, I mean, the same plane that went to see Sam Levitt flew to Waco the next morning to presumably see Blake Chapin on Tuesday, and then it's going to go from Waco to Columbus, Ohio, which we believe presumably to see Kyle McCord.
It's presumably. I mean, we don't know that one. We know Chapin.
It makes too much sense, but we don't have confirmation.
We pretty much have confirmation on Chapin, though. I mean, pretty much. I mean, we feel good about that one. McCord, hey, we're just kind of
a lot of tea leaves being read.
Yeah. It'd be kind of interesting for sure if it's McCord.
1 year guy. He's played 3 years, never redshirted because he played in 5 games, I believe, his freshman year. So he's a 2 to play 1 theoretically. He could redshirt somewhere, but Kyle McCord won 11 games.
Yeah, he was 11-1 for Ohio State, and I mean, I watched him 3 times. I watched the Penn State game, and then I watched the Michigan-Ohio State game twice. So I've seen a lot of him. He's different than these other guys that we're talking about, Sam Levitt and Blake Chapin, in that he doesn't run. I mean, he's not a runner. He's pretty pure drop back guy. He doesn't have that kind of speed. Am I getting Chapin right?
Yeah, I can see this awkward pause every time you say Chapin's name.
Yeah, I want to say Chapin for some reason. Chapin.
It's like it's like Mike Schaefer with you're adding like a Schaefer in or something.
Yeah. Anyway, McCord's different. I mean, McCord was a 5-star player in high school. What'd you say, Sean? Fourth rated in his class.
Yeah, he was right. He was right below like Caleb Williams.
Williams,
and then you had Quinn Ewers in there.
Yeah.
Drake May. He was ahead of Drake May. I mean, he's in an elite company of quarterbacks.
Yeah, and he's good. But he followed Stroud, and who's the other Ohio State quarterback? He followed Stroud and 2 first-round picks.
Well,
Fields.
Yeah, Justin Fields. Good job, Sean. You rescued me. He followed Fields and Stroud, so he didn't quite look like the guy they've had recently.
Mm-hmm.
I like him.
He was like he's like Mike Grant or something at Nebraska. Just like won games, but wasn't enough for the fan base.
No, he wasn't.
Then they brought in Tommy Frazier, and I mean, like that's what's going to happen to him at Ohio State. He won every game because their talent is so elite, other than the game that matters.
Yeah, I mean, and he threw 2 picks in the game that matters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing.
Yep. So for what it's worth, looking at the current 2024 on-3 transfer portal quarterback rankings, Will Howard is 3rd, Kyle McCord is 6th, and who's the other guy? Chapin.
I think you just butchered Blake
Chapin. All right. He is 28 is Sam Levitt, and then Chapin's a bit ahead of him. Oh yeah, he's 20th.
Okay.
So Blake Chapin 20th, Levitt is 28th.
Okay. All right.
Just behind Ethan Kaliak-Manis from Minnesota.
I encourage people to watch their video. They're interesting quarterbacks to me. They're good arm talent, and they can run. They're not runners, but they can run.
All right, let's pick up this conversation on the portal and quarterbacks. We'll have more thoughts on this next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on Husker Online. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, talking transfer portal, talking silly season quarterbacks and more. But before we get to that, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by our friends at Caldera Lab. If you're not familiar with Caldera Lab, it's a men's skincare product. Super easy to use. Twice a day, 30 seconds in the morning, 30 seconds in the evening. 94% of men have seen overall improvement to look younger using Caldera Lab, and you just feel better. You feel fresh. Been using it all football season now. Love the product. I've, in fact, reordered, and I'm on my next round of it. So I encourage you to check it out. And we've got a great deal for Husker Online listeners and users here. Just go to calderalab.com to receive 20% off. Use promo code Husker. That's promo code Husker at calderalab.com. Thanks again to Caldera Lab for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Okay, let's get back into the discussion with quarterbacks, because I do think there's also a debate. Should they take 2? Can they take 2? If you take 2, do you really have 1? Because I do think if you're trying to get 2, is it hard to get a really, really good guy here if you're getting another guy with him, or are they just solely trying to get 1? I mean, I lean towards more just taking 1 at this point, especially with Chuba Purdy, Heinrich Haarberg, both at least at this time coming back.
Oh, I'm gonna say I'd love 2. I mean,
well, I would love. I mean, can you get 2? Could you get?
That's a good question. I mean, it's a
Chapin McCord with Levitt.
Yeah, you'd have to talk. I mean, there'd have to be strong communication with everybody. It would just be best to have 2 and have 4 guys in the room.
Yeah, but what if Chuba Purdy leaves then? I mean, you have to presume that you're going to lose probably Chuba, who graduates.
Do we have to presume that?
Well, what if he gets
last year?
What if he gets beat out by the new guy?
They brought in 1 guy and almost the whole quarterback room left.
Yeah.
That's why Heinrich Haarberg was your number 2.
I live in a different world because I'm older than you guys. I always have in my mind, no, why won't Chuba just stay and continue to compete? Just compete.
Because he can get into a bidding war with a bunch of other teams, and he's got a really popular last name and is probably going to command a decent amount of interest on the portal.
He's getting good money right now already, at least from our knowledge of NIL.
He could go somewhere he's probably gifted a starting job.
Hold on, that would be his 3rd school. Okay, that'd be his 3rd school. Now hasn't he formed relationships here? I mean, he's got friends on the team. Is it an automatic that he leave?
If you're bringing in 2 quarterbacks,
right?
I mean, that's 4 quarterbacks with starting experience in theory, all in one room. There will be attrition.
I live in a fantasy.
You're bringing in 2 new guys,
and maybe over $1 million of money.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
They got that money.
Yeah, and that whole debate. I mean, going back to Coach Rule's comments of what it's going to cost to get a quarterback, when he threw out that, I mean, it made national headlines. Did he say $1 million to $1 million
to $2 million?
Yeah.
And Cam Ward, and this was reported by ESPN or On3, that he had like 8 teams on him with all offers over $1 million.
Yes, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good deal.
And Dylan Gabriel will be similar. I mean,
but Sam Levitt isn't going to command that kind of number, nor is Blake Chafin.
Now McCord?
Chapin. My God. Chapin.
You'll get it right eventually.
Come on, Jordine.
Anyway, they're not going to command that. That's not what these guys are worth. Throw the money out of it. I'm with you, Robin. It's sort of pie in the sky to think everybody's going to stick around.
Well, I think that with Chubba, you kind of already have a guy you can work with. I think you just need to supplement that room with someone that can, one, push for the starting job, and two, serve as a viable backup. That if things don't work out the way you think with Chubba, you have someone that you can give the offense to. Because right now, I think there's a lot more questions. Can you build this offense around Harbert? I don't know. I mean, compared to Chubba, I think the ceiling is significantly higher.
I think
Chubba's ceiling is significantly higher than Heinrich Harbert's.
And what does Daniel Kalen think of all this?
Good point.
I mean, that's another guy that will be here in January. That's their recruit. And they're targeting Alex Mansky from Algona, Iowa, as their guy for 2025.
Okay.
So they've got a plan, but
that's a good plan.
I mean, a lot of teams in general have just put less and less on high school recruiting, and they just try to supplement and backfill with portal. And I know Matt Rule doesn't want to do that with his roster anymore, but the quarterback position is the most important position, and they are going to have to do that. And
well, if it's Chapin, he'll come in right away and start. All right. He's already done it. He started.
So whoever the veteran is,
he has started 26 games at Baylor.
Chapin, McCord, Will Howard.
Right.
You'd bring that guy in to start. And then you'd have a Levitt come in.
Yeah. Now, if it's just Levitt, I guarantee you Levitt's coming to start. I mean, I don't know if he will, but he's that type of guy.
He's not the job.
He's not the type of guy to take a back seat. He's a very confident, cocksure. I'm the man. That's what you're dealing with. Now, that's what I like about him. I like the Levitt picture because he could be your guy for a while. I mean, he's because he's already, this would be he'd transfer. He wouldn't be close to graduation. You're going to have him at least a couple years, and he's viable. I invite you to watch his film. He's good. He's a good player. He can run it. He's a better runner than Caton Hauser was at Michigan State, and he's every bit as good a thrower. I mean, he's the one who threw that 25-yard touchdown rope in the fourth quarter. He'd be coming to start, not coming to back up. That's not in his DNA to say, yeah, I'll just wait behind Chubba Purdy. No, he'd be coming to start.
Probably pretty motivated too to think he's a kid from Oregon.
Yeah,
so you've got Oregon in the Big Ten now, and you've got Oregon State's coach that didn't recruit him now at Michigan State.
He's got a chip on his shoulder.
So he's got a little bit of chip on his shoulder on some of these teams.
He does have a chip on his shoulder.
And I don't know about Washington if they recruited him very hard out of high school with, that's a team in his region.
Right. I don't know.
I think it just all comes down to what the staff feels about Chubba Purdy. If they think that he can be a guy, I think you take one quarterback. If they take two quarterbacks, I think that's a direct reflection on their confidence in him being that QB1 type player.
I think they think he can. I mean, I don't know about Chubba. It's just hard to say.
I know.
I mean,
he showed flashes, but he also ended the 3 games he started with an interception.
Right.
Now he had sports hernia surgery, and that's about a 6 Chubba Purdy.
Yeah, he had it.
Presumably, yeah, he's had his surgery or is going to have it. That will keep him out. Sports hernia typically is a 6 to 12 week recovery. So that would theoretically get him back for spring ball.
Well, he needs to be back for spring.
But yeah, for a guy like that, he needs to be 100% for spring.
Oh yeah, he needs to develop.
No doubt.
He needs it
because there will be competition brought in to directly compete for that starting job.
Yeah, it's going to get really interesting. Now this is going to be really interesting how Nebraska's coaches, how they handle this, and to see if who they lock down. I mean, I really think they got a great shot at Levitt. It seems like he's the first one they went and saw, which I think tells you something. Then from there, I don't know. I can't tell.
Do you have concerns all about their quarterback identification after the Sims?
Sure. Yeah, of course I do.
mean, I think that it's got to be a concern at this point.
Yeah.
Like they missed badly, and it directly ruined their season.
Now, Chapin doesn't have the turnover history, though. He did throw 10 interceptions last year. This year, though, he cut him down 13 touchdowns, three picks. And I think he's 36. His ratio over the course of time at Baylor's 36-13. So it's not like Sims was at Georgia Tech. I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about that turnover piece very much with either of the guys I've seen, Shapen and Levitt.
What we don't know about last year was it only Jeff Sims? Was like, did they say, okay, this is it, we're done? Or did they actually go
quick.
around and vet up? They really didn't have the time to do a lot of vetting.
They did. I'd have to think,
because they were so worried about hiring a staff, moving to Lincoln, locking up high school recruits, hosting 47 visitors.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot that went on.
Right. I got you.
Where I think now
I'd love to ask Rule that question. How many guys did you look at?
I mean, but
I'm
they're
sure
going
their
to see
approach
guys in
is
person.
significantly different than it was a year ago.
They weren't going around like this last year that we know of, where they're
flying city to city.
Where they're going A to B to C to D to meet with quarterbacks, and we're only on Tuesday.
Good point.
Yeah, I don't think
so. There's definitely a little bit more thoroughness to this interviewing process. How much did they get a vet and interview Jeff Sims? They went off Jeff Collins's recommendation, who was a Matt Rule Satterfield colleague, and they believed in him.
I don't want to say they didn't vet him because I don't.
Well, they had a guy they worked with give him like their own vetting.
I just wonder what Rule would say to that. That's what I'd like to hear from him before I make any assumption.
But did they get a chance to go meet several quarterbacks in person last year? I mean, I think that's what's different. I can't imagine they did.
How quickly he was their first transfer portal ad. So like that really closed the window a bit for their time to even do things like that.
It happened so quickly last year. People almost couldn't believe it, how quick and then a lot of people, including you, Steve Sipple, really thought that it was going to be this great battle between Casey Thompson and Jeff Sims.
I did. I thought that's the way it would set up. But that was, again, kind of pie in the sky. I sort of live in this world where I think two guys should compete, and now it would have had to occur in August. And again, it's a little bit, okay, if there's a competition in August, it's only about a 2-week period where you can have a true competition before you got to get ready for the opener. So it wasn't
two scrimmages.
Yeah, probably 2 scrimmages. How many practices? 10. So I don't know if the competition's really real. So
spring is when these competitions have to really happen.
Right.
But, all right. When we come back, we're going to talk some Husker basketball. It was a tough weekend in Lincoln against Creighton, but the Huskers hit Big Ten, their Big Ten schedule early here. They got a huge home game as well Sunday against Michigan State. We'll get Robin's thoughts on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washer. We're going to talk some Nebraska basketball. But before we get to that, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by Omaha Steaks. No better holiday gift than getting that special person or friend or colleague or coworker a box of steaks. You can ship them anywhere around the country. They come right to your house in a cooler. And they've got unbelievable specials right now at omahasteaks.com for the holidays. Not only can you receive 50% off site-wide on many of their selections, we're giving you an additional $30 off that price with promo code Husker. Omahasteaks.com has all the selections on there at checkout. Make sure you use the special promo code Husker to take advantage of this great special at Omaha Steaks right now. As you can see, you can get a lot of different things. And it's more than steaks. They've got a lot of great side items, chicken, hot dogs, sausages, pork, you name it. And it comes right to your house
in a cooler
with dry ice, frozen solid, an awesome gift.
God,
Zip, you better get some steaks sent out to your family.
Steaks come to your house in a cooler with dry ice. The country hasn't completely fallen apart yet.
There's still
amazing. There's still some degree of hope.
So once again, that's promo code Husker upon checkout at omahasteaks.com to receive $30 off your order. Okay, let's get into Husker basketball talk because Robin, it was a tough Sunday against Creighton. They had the lead 9 minutes into that game, and then the wheels just fell off. How do you think this team responds with Minnesota and Michigan State to open up Big Ten play?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the whole theme of this week, and we're taping this on Tuesday, so Wednesday night is going to go a long way in answering that question as far as how the rest of the week, these 2 first Big Ten games play out, because when it comes to Big Ten road games, this is about as favorable as it gets. Minnesota's gone through their share of ups and downs. They're 5-3. They took a beating by Ohio State, and so they're reeling a little bit as well. And they're kind of in a situation where they need to respond the right way. So this is a pretty critical game early on in the year for both of Nebraska and Minnesota, but I think especially for Nebraska, just considering the way Sunday went. Like the fact that they lost the game was not a surprise. They were 4.5-point underdogs. Creighton's a potential top 10, top 5 team when things go their way. And it was just one of those things where everything Nebraska couldn't afford to do, they did. Everything they couldn't afford to let Creighton do, they did. So how quickly can you wash that game? It's hard for the fans, I know, because they got to hear about it for the next year. But for these players, they got to have a short memory, and they got to realize that it's one game. It's one game of 31. And there's everything that you still wanted to accomplish out of this season. Every realistic goal you had out in front of you is still there. And it starts, especially now, with the most important game yet, your first Big Ten opener, your first true road game. And this is a team that has a bunch of veteran leaders. Fred has talked about how he loves the leadership and the makeup and the composure of this group. Well, now it's time to prove it. They need those veteran guys to step up and get this thing under control. Because if you let this hangover from the Creighton loss carry over and put you at 0-1 in a winnable Big Ten road game, and those don't come very often, that puts you in a significant hole with a good Michigan State team coming to town on Sunday.
I like what Fred said on the radio last night, that he got a text from somebody that reminded him, hey, you're 7-1. I mean,
in a game you weren't expected to win.
Right. You're 7-1. I mean, it's not. And you know what? Teams, I've watched the NBA more closely than you guys probably. Teams get blown out all the time and then come back, and it's not a big deal. Now that it's an 81, 82
Look
game
at Creighton.
schedule. But yeah, Creighton got hammered.
A week earlier, they got smoked.
Just smoked by Colorado State. Scored 48.
Yes.
The way Creighton shot against Nebraska, they would have won against about anybody in the country.
And that's the
100.
thing. And one thing you got to realize if you're Nebraska, there's very few teams, if any, that present the type of matchup problems that Creighton does, with the way that they have 4 elite 3-point shooters surrounded by the big 2-time Big East
Defensive Player of the Year
and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Like that is just as difficult as it gets to defend. And when you let guys get hot and get comfortable, that was the problem. They didn't challenge shots the way that they needed to.
That's the issue.
Once Shireman got comfortable, it was over. It was over, because then they had to focus their attention on him. And then there's Ashworth, and there's Alexander, and then there's Kalkbrenner inside. It's like there's
Farabello.
Pick your poison.
Yeah, exactly.
Pick your poison. So again, you have to compartmentalize that game. It was an ugly game, disappointing. Everybody's mad. The taste is going to be bitter for the next 364 days. But guess what? Your biggest opportunity on your schedule is now coming up.
And they could go, 2-0 is not out of the question. I mean, they could win both these games. They could lose both these games.
Oh, you got to win Wednesday.
Yeah. The way I see this team, Rob, Sean, is Big Ten. They play 20 games. I think they're an 8-12 to 12-8 team, and how they play in close games will determine
the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at the Ken Palm predictions, and it's right there with them, to where, like, right now they have them going 9-11.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there you go.
There's probably about, I'd say maybe 3/4 of those are 1-score games.
Right. It's just
1-possession games.
That's how it's going to come down. Can they win close games? And I don't even mean 2-point, 1-point games. I just mean games that are going to be close. It might end up being 8. But it's going to be close throughout. And how do they do?
Free throws, which helps.
Oh yeah, that Rob, you've covered teams at Nebraska. They're terrible free throw shooting teams, and down the stretch, it would kill them. Not now.
They lost games solely at the free throw line.
They did, and I don't think that'll happen this year.
Well, it shouldn't. And I guess the one thing though is they got to rebound better. They've given up double-digit offensive rebounds in their last 3 games. They were double-digit. Under minus 10, whatever, 11, minus 11 against Creighton on the boards. This is the first time they've been out rebounded all season. So now you're entering Big Ten play. And if you're not rebounding, you will get dominated, especially against Minnesota. That's what they do. They're a big physical team that are going to try to dominate the paint and beat you up inside. Nebraska has to be able to play more physical and play a lot smarter than they have been, both on the boards and defensively in the paint.
Well, then this Kansas State game that looms on the 17th, we'll talk about it more next week, but that's another big one. I mean, you go down to Bramlage. This
tough game.
That's a defining game on the schedule, because they won the Oregon State game, and we said there's 3 real tough 4 if you count Duquesne, 4 tough non-con games. And if they could go 3-1 out of the 4,
big.
It'd be huge.
Huge. And, talk about close games. Right now, Ken Palm has that game 78-74. That's a coin flip.
Who?
For K-State.
For K-State. Coin flip.
Yeah.
That's basically 3 points for the home team.
Interesting. Yeah, K-State's not like they were last year.
Is North Dakota any good in the Summit this year?
No. They are 261st in Ken Palm right now.
Because sometimes you get one of those Summit League Dakota teams, they could be good.
That is Nebraska's highest projected percentage of winning, but 93%.
Even higher than South Carolina State.
Even higher than South Carolina.
Wow.
I take that back. Sorry. 98 for South Carolina State, 93 for North Dakota.
In South Carolina State, that's the game after Christmas where everyone comes back jet lagged and well fed, and you just hope that you show up.
Yeah, I would think they'd do okay.
They've lost that game before over the years.
They have.
The break game.
Oh, God, yeah, don't remind him.
But here's the thing, though. Nebraska took care of business in all those previous types of games. They have one bad game against a team that is currently 5th in Ken Palm nationally.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You cannot let that game, everything went wrong for you. Okay, so what? Go take care of business in the Big Ten.
All right, when we come back, we'll bring in Abby Barmore. We'll take your questions in the mailbag next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, Abby Barmore. Before we get into the mailbag, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Whether you're attending Nebraska games in person, watching from home, you have to look the part as a Husker fan. We've partnered with Home Field to get you looking like a true fan on game days. They're a premium apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They emphasize their commitment to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Their designs are super unique. They delve into the archives and history of each school using unique logos, mascots, iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. Everyone wants a different shirt than what you can buy at the regular sporting goods stores. And that's why you want to go to Home Field. They've got stuff that you're just not going to find when you're going to your favorite sporting goods stores here around the area. So I urge you to check them out. And we've got a great deal for our Husker Online listeners. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code Huskers23. That's Huskers23 to get 15% off. Homefieldapparel.com. Promo code Huskers23 to receive 15% off your order. Thank you again to Home Field Apparel for sponsoring us on the Husker Online Show. All right, Abby Barmore, start us off.
Okay, first one. Does Nebraska have a legit shot at getting a top 5 portal quarterback?
Top 5?
I
right
think
now that would be Howard.
I would put McCord pretty dang close.
Sean,
He's
we're not
sixth.
positive that they're even going after McCord.
Well, why would the plane go from Waco to Columbus?
There's a bunch of Ohio State guys in the
portal.
Yeah. Fleming. I mean, they're not going to get Julian Fleming, but you're probably right because it's Satterfield plane, right? It's a Satterfield plane.
Yeah, I'm just saying I think McCord would be close to that. He won 11 games.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not, and it makes sense in the context of Will Howard. If they went after Will Howard, why not go after McCord? So you're probably right.
And what kind of deal was McCord on at Ohio State? Like, I never looked at him as like the guy that they wanted to build their program around.
No, but he was a starting quarterback at Ohio State, which means he had to be making $500,000 at the minimum. Right? Yeah, right, Rob?
Probably easily $1 million.
Yeah. That's what I would think of. Yeah, I just said $500,000.
And he was a high profile recruit. So
yeah, 5-star guy. I think Rob's right.
I mean, look at the names that he was up there with out of the recruiting rankings.
That's $1 million quarterback.
They more or less told him he's not going to be the guy.
But Sean, we can say Nebraska would pay $1 million.
They would. And I think their collective wants to send the message. They will do that. I mean, I think for Nebraska's collective, this is also a very big month to send a message. Hey,
who do they want to send a message to?
Just to the fan base and to the college football
other players
out in the country. Like, hey, like Nebraska's NIL, when there's a player that's worth it, you can say we give our roster $10 million, but you have to have a $10 million roster that's worth that kind of money to give that kind of money to.
You said something really interesting. People are going to be interested in that. The collective would like to pay $1 million. I mean, because there's a lot of people that think Nebraska can't do it, won't do it. They'd like to do it. You just got to have the right quarterback.
Right. You got somebody that would take it, and that makes sense. And I think there's a narrative out there that for some reason Nebraska is not equipped, and they are equipped.
Okay, here's the question. If it's $1 million, would they go $1.5 million? How far would they go?
If it can change this entire team to win 3 or 4 more games or whatever that number is, that's worth a lot of money.
There's got to be a guy that's interested in Nebraska that is worth paying $1.5 million. So we'll see if that's even on the table.
The market is the key. All right, next question.
Okay. Do you think Nebraska will move Satterfield to the tight end coach and hire a quarterback coach?
It seems likely that there's going to be a shuffle. I think the better question is, will he remain the play caller? Like, is he the true outright? I mean, like, will that play calling duties remain with Satterfield if he's not the quarterback's coach?
I think they will. You guys pointed it out. Sean pointed it out. Rule really sort of, I thought, tipped his hand last week when he said that their original idea was not to have Satterfield as the quarterback's coach. It was to have him as OC/tight ends coach. But they just evidently didn't find the quarterback's coach they wanted. So it kind of became okay, well, you're going to have to coach a quarterback, Satterfield. And it didn't work that well. I mean, it just didn't. I don't have anything against Marcus Satterfield. I don't think he's an issue. To me, play calling, he was fine. But man, the quarterback numbers are the quarterback numbers, and that's his direct responsibility.
Yeah, and so if they do move him,
yes,
I mean, I think the immediate just assumption is that they would go outside and hire somebody, but would promoting internally also be an option, given how much Rule has talked about how much he likes the young up-and-coming coaches on his staff in, analyst roles or GAs or whatever.
Quarterback coach there? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not familiar enough with the lower tier, quote unquote, of the staff, if there's any viable candidates internally.
Something to look at.
By the way, Kyle McCord, you know where he's from, Steve Stipple?
Where's he from?
Philadelphia.
Tough kid. He could handle this.
The staff has a lot of ties in Philly.
Yeah, they have a lot of ties. I like it from the standpoint of, now we may be talking about McCord way too much, but okay, he played at Ohio State Fishbowl, hard place to play. I mean, one loss in the town. It's horrifying.
They moved him out of town. He lost one game. He got moved out of there.
Right. And okay, so he played in that. He could handle this. And he's from Philadelphia. He can handle Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean.
Okay, after the quarterback room, what position needs the most attention this offseason?
Linebacker might need a body.
More than one.
Well, I think linebacker and receiver, if you can find like a true number one, which is easier to find in the portal than a lot of positions. But I do believe linebacker, when you lose Henrich and Reimer
and Bullock,
probably Bullock, more than likely Bullock, that's three guys. So your top backers right now are Javin Wright and Mekhi Bayer. Those are your, by far and away, your top two returning backers.
Could you move Sherman into that backer role from Jack? Could you move Borders?
He worked at middle in the spring for sure.
Right. See, you might have some.
And Bayer played some Jack last year.
Yeah, you have some flexibility if you look at the depth chart. You can look at those Jack guys and envision them playing the same position as Reimer and Bullock and Henrich.
Because Princewell could just become the true Jack.
Yeah.
And then maybe move a Sherman.
Yeah, you can move those guys around.
But that being said, are you comfortable enough with that group that if you can go get somebody that can vault all of them, I think that's a no-brainer.
Oh, I think you do. Yeah. Or someone that's just viable that you could see maybe doing it. I'd go get.
Like, who's the number one receiver on this team right now for next year? I don't think you can answer that.
Yeah.
I'd like to think is Malachi.
Yeah.
But he's not proven.
Yeah. Lloyd Jalen is more proven right now. I mean, Lloyd, man, 3 huge catches. He might be the guy. I don't know.
Do you have a guy that can run an 8-yard stick route on 3rd and 8 in tight coverage, fend off a body and catch a football and do that 7 times in a game? I don't think they have that guy right now.
And you're the guy as much as anybody, Sip, that wants that big-bodied number one, that alpha receiver.
Oh, God.
You ain't getting open in this league. You got to make yourself get open with physicality and route running.
Coleman's the closest thing they have to it. But is he ready to be a bona fide number one in the Big Ten?
Alpha.
I don't know if he's quite ready. And he had shoulder surgery, by the way.
Who's that Philadelphia receiver, the big body Eagles?
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown. That's like, or, I'm thinking Purify from Nebraska lore. Somebody, what would Purify look like on this team?
You could say that about a lot of
Anunwa, Kenny Bell.
Yeah. I mean, those guys aren't even you don't even look at them as the
Stanley Morgan.
Yeah, Stanley Morgan. You need somebody like that.
There's been, who was that real tall guy from El Paso on the team? Like, not Alex Henry.
I know who you're talking about.
Will Henry.
Will Henry.
I mean, Will Henry would have been like a standout on this team last year. That's how thin it got down. I mean, they didn't have anybody.
Yeah, Will Henry would have been playing for sure.
Brandon Riley would have been like an All-American compared to what they have. I mean, Jordan Westerkamp. You think about some of the guys.
Yeah, he would have looked like Cooper Kupp, Brandon Riley on this team. I mean, he would have.
All right. Looks like we have time, Abby, for one final question.
Okay. What would you do if you won the lottery?
I'd keep working.
For context, the estimated jackpot currently is $435 million with a cash value of $204.8 million. So let that factor into your decisions here.
I would keep working, but I wouldn't buy a jet, but I would get hours, like so you can get places. So
jet.
You guys would have the best setup. We'd fly private to every game.
Good God.
Go buy a
Are
ticket.
you playing? Are you playing?
I was gonna say, go get it.
Sean,
What's
you
that?
can go play.
Yeah, go get a ticket on the way home.
Take Kit and Carly and just go to the U stop.
Then we would just hire I'd hire like Jason Whitlock I'd hire like national people to join our staff. And
you don't need Whitlock. You got me.
I was gonna say,
I'm just making
what's
up
that?
something.
Takes are way hotter
Like,
over here.
God.
We would I would just grossly overbuild like a studio building.
Have office space in the
I
stadium.
really like this idea of Sean winning the lottery. It's much more exciting than if I won it. Go ahead, Rob.
What else are you going to spend it on?
I know I do.
I mean, yeah, the boring stuff. I'd buy a house, cars, pay for college for the kids.
Get a place in Florida or Arizona or something.
Yeah, I like the idea of. Can you just like lease or rent jet time? Like
hours.
Yeah, just do that.
You don't need to own a jet.
No.
Just get I want 50 jet hours.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with maintenance
is
or
where-
staffing or any of that.
This is where we're different guys. I don't need that. I don't want to go anywhere. I know what I do. I'd buy a fleet of Harleys. I'd have 12 to 14 to 16. When just at my leisure, treat them like they're Hot Wheels. I mean, like when I was a kid. Now I just have real Harleys sitting in the garage.
I'd hire a chef, like a world-class chef, just to cook excellent
steak,
healthy meals, and just take that off your plate.
Yeah, like LeBron. You'd be like LeBron, LaShawn. That's not bad. Those are good ideas. I don't get the jet. Where do you want to go?
Well, I'm taking you guys to the games.
Well, that'd be good.
Yeah, I would go to every basketball game.
Oh, on a jet.
Yeah.
Fred would be totally freaked out by you following around the team.
We could buy a place in every Big Ten town. So we just have like a place. Then we'll just do our post-game show at all the Husker Online headquarters around the Big Ten.
I like where this is going here.
I do like this. This ended up being way better than I thought.
Let's go to our Husker Online location in West Lafayette.
That's a big home.
It's just a house. We have a house in every Big Ten town. Just grossly blow the money on
motorcycles in this house.
Covering Nebraska football.
Like not nearly enough of it would go to our families. It'd all be just covering Nebraska athletics.
Abby, what are you buying?
Yeah, Abby, what are you doing?
I'd probably buy my parents' house, buy myself a house.
You're not moving your parents?
I love the idea.
Yeah.
I love the idea of getting a chef because I'm not big into cooking.
Okay.
That would be awesome. But you're right, the traveling thing. I haven't traveled a lot, but that would be fun and you could go anywhere, not just to Madison, Wisconsin. You could travel the world.
Yeah, we could branch out beyond the Big Ten footprint.
Yeah. Good question. That was a good question.
Thank you.
All right. Well, when we come back, it will be more Abby Barmore. We'll get you ready for the big regional weekend in Lincoln. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Final segment of the show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. This segment of the Husker Online Show, Steve Sipple, brought to you by...
You know the deal. Larson Motors. If you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram never has been easier. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. That's LarsonMotorGroup.com. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
All right, let's close the show with some volleyball because it's another big weekend. The Sweet 16 and potentially the Elite 8 will involve Nebraska in the Bob Devaney Sports Center. We've got Abby Barmore, and it's kind of an interesting draw, Abby, because Thursday they're going to play a 1:00 match. So I can't imagine it's going to be a very productive work day around the city of Lincoln for a lot of folks.
Yeah, I think they probably should just close down the city, but That is a tough draw. That time is hard. Last year when Nebraska played in Louisville, it was like a 11 a.m. there in Louisville, but it was 10 a.m. here on a Thursday. So I guess it's a little bit better, but not great. And then after Nebraska plays Georgia Tech at 1 o'clock, then Kentucky and Arkansas play at 3:30. And that is also going to be a really good match. And they're like SEC foes, and they've played already a couple times this season. So that'll be interesting to watch for sure.
It's great for sports writers on deadline.
Yeah, it's really strange though, and it's happened before. They played there was a similar occurrence a few years ago. Penn State, Nebraska played in like a early match. It was odd. That was
ESPN.
That was on a Friday. Yeah. So yeah, it's how's John feel about it? John Cook.
We haven't talked to him yet, but I'm assuming that he does not like that time. I mean, he's someone that doesn't really even like Sunday afternoon times or even playing on Sundays at all. So 1 o'clock is pretty difficult. And hopefully, I'm guessing that the fans in Devaney are going to bring it, because in that first round match, it was every once in a while, Devaney's just a little stale and a little off, but the stakes are getting higher now.
I'll say this though, it will be a great opportunity again for Nebraska fans to flex, because how many women's sports in the world would fill an arena up for a 1 o'clock Thursday game? I'm going to say none.
I wonder, could UConn basketball?
I don't
think so anymore. I don't know.
1 o'clock on a work day, not a holiday period.
Yeah. Could Wisconsin do that, Abby? Wisconsin volleyball.
I think they could, especially for like such a big moment like this.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to like look at the numbers. Like Nebraska will probably have at least 8,600 people there,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know if Wisconsin will get that many, but
a lot of the fans at Nebraska games are people who are retired, though. I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, this is great. But it should be a great atmosphere regardless of when they play the match. What's your read on this draw, though? I mean, do you like the draw this weekend, Abby?
Yeah, Nebraska got put into their quarter is one of the best quarters, I would say, in Nebraska's favor. And Georgia Tech, they have a couple of like really big hitters, but they're not. I want to say they're not as balanced, and they haven't had as many huge wins as Nebraska. I mean, I think Nebraska's the best team in the country, at least in best one or two teams in the country. So this Georgia Tech one will be good. And then also, I mean, Arkansas and Kentucky. Kentucky's beaten Arkansas twice this year. The first one was in 5 sets, and then they swept them the next time. So I expect that to be Kentucky win, and they're really rolling. A great offensive team, yeah.
And they've played in Lincoln already, which is kind of rare for regional opponents. Have already played here once this year.
Yes, yeah. Nebraska beat them in 4. It was like the last game of the non-conference, I think, and Kentucky has gotten a lot better since then. They had some new pieces they were trying to get going, but Brooklyn Delaire, I want to say that's how you say her name. She's a freshman. She didn't play that great against Nebraska, but she was the SEC Freshman of the Year, first team pick, her regional Freshman of the Year. So she's really stepped up, and they have a lot of great pieces on that
Craig
team.
Skinner's the coach still.
Yeah.
Former John Cook disciple, the head coach of Kentucky.
Sure.
So
yeah, absolutely.
He's going to have familiarity with John and how they. I mean, he's built his program.
And they've played each other pretty often over the last few years. They have like a home and away with Kentucky, Stanford, Louisville, and Nebraska. So they all kind of trade off a little bit, but Nebraska's beaten the last few times for sure.
Well, it should be a great weekend for the volleyball. And what time would they play Saturday, Abby, if they make the regional finals?
They haven't announced that time. Hopefully it's going to be later. But who knows? Hopefully it's not a 1 o'clock game again. But it does work out for me because I like to, then I get to have my evening.
Is this the TV people kind of taking advantage of Nebraska, saying Nebraska can do this. Nebraska can have a full arena at 1 o'clock. Nobody else
I don't
can.
even know if that's the case, Sip. I mean, I think when you have West Coast teams involved, you have to give them the later times no matter what those are.
So that's all it is.
Stanford is hosting that. What's the other host site?
Stanford, Pitt, Wisconsin.
So you have one that's in the Eastern time zone, 2 in the Central, and 1 in the Pacific.
Okay.
But it's interesting that like Wisconsin got the 6 o'clock slate.
why did
they're also-
Wisconsin
yeah.
get a better window than Nebraska as far as like for fan purposes? And it doesn't really matter. Nebraska will fill that place up at 6 in the morning.
Does Nebraska have any issues right now, Abby, that they need to sort of straighten out? How's the? I mean,
Like
when I think of NCAA volleyball, and when it gets down to the nitty gritty, you got to serve, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's gigantic. This hasn't been a great serving team all year, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So how are they of late that
I
way?
would say like this back half of the season, they've gotten better at serving. There's less errors. There's still too many errors, but their goal is to always be even. So, 4 aces, 4 errors.
Mhm.
They want to serve really tough. And also another thing of serving that some people don't really look at is how often the other team is out of system. So if the ball doesn't go perfectly to their setter right at the net, how
That's
does that affect them?
Right.
And Nebraska's very good at getting other teams out of system. And also they do a good job of attacking out of system as well. So
Nebraska
serving,
does.
yes, Nebraska does. And so serving is going to be huge. I mean, they always talk about serving and passing is the two most important skills in volleyball.
Yep.
And Nebraska's pretty good at passing, one of the best passing teams in the country, led by Lexi Rodriguez. So I think those things are going to be huge, but also getting their hitters going, all of them, especially those middle blockers, because the last couple of games they've kind of fallen off. And they have 2 really elite players in the middle there.
Yeah, they're better in the middle than they've been in some time, right? Nebraska.
Yeah.
They're a force in the middle, Sean.
Becca Alec
And Andy
Andy
Jackson.
Yeah. I think the duo of those two works really well together because Becca brings a huge block and her offense has improved a lot this season. And then Andy Jackson has one of the most lethal slides in college volleyball.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Nothing
going
like
to
a
be
lethal slide.
a great weekend of volleyball in Lincoln, and nobody covers it better than Abby Barmore. So make sure you follow her work all weekend at HuskerOnline, as she'll have match coverage, coverage leading up to the matches, and hopefully we're talking Final Four in Tampa next week here on this show. And a reminder, if you're not a subscriber or member of HuskerOnline, we've got a great special for our YouTube listeners. Get 2 months of access for $1 by simply using promo code NU1. That's promo code NU1 to receive 2 months for $1 for Abby Barmore, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. I'm Sean Callahan signing off here for another edition of Husker Online.